Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is the Vulgar Marxist. It has been, I think, almost 2 months since I made a video, and this is likely the last one I'll be making for quite some time. I recently got permission from certain people on an MMO I play to assist them in producing some content, and that is consuming the overwhelming majority of my time at present. I am extremely happy with this. They really do need the assistance. But this in turn means what few hours I have of relaxation are occupied with this, and making videos isn't something I have the time for anymore. I'm not hauling cans with my former company. I'm not sitting in dock doors for 2, 3, 4 hours a day. I just don't have the time to make the quality of videos, however lackluster mine may be, that I would prefer to make. That said, I really wanted to comment on the ICMI this year because I was able to attend. For the first time, it was within driving distance of my house. I bought tickets back in April when they first came on sale. And the Honey Badgers, who run the International Conference of Men's Issues, have asked people to please comment upon it. I'm not sure what to say here. It was a good conference. I liked it. Okay, they had excellent panels. They had decent panelists, though not all of them were necessarily specialized in men's issues. It was more conservative than I would have liked. But we'll get into that later. In general, the panels I went to were extremely well informed, run by people deeply interested in the rights of individuals, particularly in this case men. They address topics that I understand are of concern to the movement. They aren't necessarily the topics I would like to see. Again, we'll get to that later. But it was a very informed and informative experience. Well worth the money I paid. The issues addressed, as I said, were largely conservative issues. Things like child access, false accusations, legal concerns, overreach by government authority, things of this nature. There were left-wing issues addressed. The draft was roundly criticized on all the panels I saw, to my great joy. Other issues included the expectations imposed upon men, an issue very near and dear to my heart, as a Marxist, deeply concerned about the toll that provisioning takes upon men's bodies and men's mental and physical health, not just their physical body, their mental health as well. Suicide rates were covered. Mental health issues were covered. All of this was wonderful to see in a context where it is not men being blamed for the problems they're having. In the same way we have seen for centuries poor people blamed for the problems they're having. The understanding this is not men's doing. This is not men doing this to themselves. This is society imposing this upon men. So, yes, I was very happy with the conference, and I'm not going to say I wasn't happy. But there are certain issues that were not addressed that I feel will absolutely impact the men's rights movement going forward if it fails to address them. And I would like to spell out 3 of those issues right now. The first of these issues is climate change. We already know that climate change is happening. We already know what the UN's assistance policy is going to be. They have already said very clearly they will help women, women, and women only. And this is going to impact hundreds of millions, if not billions of people, and we already know what the result of that is going to be. Hundreds of millions, if not billions of men and boys, displaced, fleeing helter-skelter across the globe, starving, freezing, and blamed for the consequences of the decisions made by those in positions of authority. Now, I am not saying we need to adopt the ridiculous mass immigration policies of Europe. No, that's not helpful. We, however, need to immediately begin campaigning to reverse the UN's women-only assistance position. This needs to be a large campaign, an aggressive campaign, and we need to base it upon the understanding that climate change is absolutely happening and will absolutely result in hundreds of millions, if not billions, of men and boys displaced and killed. Killed by famine, killed by exposure to the elements, killed by dehydration, killed by wars they are dragged into for resources that are no longer enough for everyone. This is going to be a critical issue moving forward. This is, to be extremely blunt, this is going to be the make or break issue of the men's rights movement. If we are to be taken seriously in our concern over the lives of men and boys, we must absolutely address climate change head on, directly, immediately. There's not going to be any workaround for this one. We will either be legitimized by our prediction of the overwhelmingly male casualties of climate change, or we will ignore this issue and lose any legitimacy we might have ever hoped to have. This will absolutely happen. Again, I repeat, there are going to be displacements and deaths possibly into the billions because of this. And it will overwhelmingly be men and boys who suffer. We must establish a clear policy within our movement that the UN's position is wrong, that assistance must be given to all persons regardless of gender, and that flooding existing countries which are already overpopulated and straining the carrying capacities of their environments is not a responsible solution. The countries these people are in must be provided the assistance necessary to support their populations, and that's not going to be easy. I'm going to be really blunt here. The Indo-Russian War is going to be one of the most bloody conflicts in human history. What Indo-Russian War? The one where the population of India, unable to sustain itself, starts moving north. That Indo-Russian War. And it's going to be an absolute horror. And it is going to happen. And we must, as individuals who care about men and boys who will die by the millions, if not tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, address this clearly and decisively. Now, the second issue. I have labored for some time to get the honey badgers, specifically Hannah Wolin, to understand jobs are not magically infinite. When the employment to population ratio increases, one of two things is going to happen. Either wages are going to fall off a cliff, or an equal number of people will have to lose their job. This is exactly what we have observed from the entry of women into the labor market. The numbers are there. Men's labor force participation went from 90% to 70% as women's labor force participation rose. and the net difference exactly and precisely correlates with a decline in wages as a percentage of GDP. This is, again, an issue we must address, particularly for conservative MRAs. If you want men to go back to accepting responsibility for families, for households, as providers, then $60,000 to $70,000 per year must be the norm, and that's not going to happen while women are competing with men over jobs. We can see very clearly, very plainly, and I have every reason to believe the feminists when they say this is true, that when women enter a labor market, wages fall off a cliff. Now, we could say this is simple supply and demand. I personally believe that that's the case. You could say women lacking the same social obligations that are imposed upon men have less reason to bargain over wages and therefore bargain less effectively. Again, entirely possible. But the fact remains, the crisis of male under- and unemployment and the collapse of wages must be addressed by this movement without rose-colored glasses, without, we can just walk backwards. No, we can't walk backwards. Not like that. Time goes one direction, the direction is forwards. We must find new methods of making the argument that if women are going to take jobs from men, then women must feed, clothe, and house non-working men, or they're not permitted to have jobs. If you take a job, you feed a man, or you don't get a job. There are not opportunities for everyone. There never were. There aren't even jobs for everyone. There never were. And as a movement, we must begin clearly stating that every person in society is to be fed, clothed, and housed, and they cannot do this by themselves. The last concept I have come up with myself, so it will be almost entirely new to most of the people listening. It is called titleage, and it is based on reasoning from the state of nature theorists of the 17th and 18th century. Hobbes, Rousseau, Locke, Rawls. The concept is that if society has the right to impose obligations onto individuals, that it can do so only on condition that it provide them all of the tools necessary to meet those obligations. In our case, if men are socially obligated to be physically fit, then every male from the day of his birth is entitled to a free gym membership. If men are socially obligated to provision a family, then every male from the day of his birth is entitled to a $60,000 a year job. And if society cannot afford to meet the costs of the burden it is imposing upon individuals, then it must stop imposing such burdens. This is, once again, a critically central concept to men's emancipation in a society that will very soon be facing limited resources. We cannot allow society to say, men must produce and produce and produce and produce and give to everyone but themselves, doing, I repeat, an incalculable toll upon their mental and physical health in the process. If society wishes men to perform tasks, society must grant to those men everything they need to perform them, or society is asking too much of men. This is, I repeat, a central and critical issue to the men's movement. We cannot free men from social burdens if men are having demands placed upon them with no access to the resources necessary to meet those demands. Now, before I finish, once again, I have significant time constraints upon my schedule going forward. I am probably not going to be able to do another video for months if I resume this channel ever again. I would very much like to have finished several video series I've started. I'm probably not going to be able to, and I do apologize for that. But the net upside is that an MMO video game I very much love is going to get 50 to 100 new missions that, frankly, it desperately needs. So, for me, this is a net positive. For you, hopefully I can resume this channel in the very near future. I need to look at time constraints and think about what I want from my life before I can do that. In the meantime, it has been a pleasure speaking to you all, and I wish all of you a good night.